The Conservative MP Elliot Colburn stunned the Commons last week when he stood up and gave a searingly honest account of his experience with suicide, the biggest cause of death in men under the age of 50.
Elliot said he wanted to send a message to those considering taking their own life, that help is out there. Here's what he bravely told his fellow MPs.
In recent years, something like 6,500 people die in the UK each year due to suicide. And in 2021, I was nearly one of them. In that moment, I felt alone and scared and like there was no way out, and that the world would be better off without me in it. But I don't recognise that man anymore. I know...
And Elliot is here with us now. I can just imagine how hard it must have been for you to think, am I going to put myself out there in such a personal way, in such a place, Prime Minister's questions, and share something so personal? Did you anguish about this for a long time?
Yeah, it took me quite some time to make the decision that I was going to do it. I've been blessed with a great recovery since 2021, and it was something that I was thinking about doing for some time at the end of last year, the beginning of this one, but it wasn't until I woke up that morning and knew that PMQs was coming up that I made the decision that I was going to do it if I was lucky enough to get called.
I mean, it's so brave of you to do that, because I imagine it's a huge leap of faith in a sense, isn't it? Because once you've spoken about it, you can't take it back. It is sort of revealing something very personal, isn't it? Why did you feel it was important? You thought, I know I need to talk about this.
It was something that I was feeling at that time. So at the back end of 2021 and the lead up to the attempt, I meant what I said in the Commons. I did feel incredibly isolated and lonely. And actually, one of the things that I wish I had heard at the time, or I wish that someone had said to me, is that, you know what you're feeling is not something unusual. There are other people that feel this way as well. But not only that, there are ways to get past it, and there is help out there. And I meet a lot of people, whether it be through my constituency surgeries or just through this line of work. And I'd noticed that mental health is coming up a lot more post-pandemic. It's something that is mentioned all the time. And I thought maybe if I share my experiences, someone else listening might feel as if actually I don't have to do something so silly and so drastic. I might reach out, I might speak to someone and see if there's help out there for me.
And it's one of those things where the truth is, the fact that you are a Member of Parliament is, on one level, irrelevant to this. The important point was that you were a young man in your early 30s who was struggling and felt alone. And you're saying to what we know are very many other young men and women who in their 30s, you aren't alone, because what you've got is not something which is about it's not your fault, it's not something you've done, it's about something which you can be helped for, which you can be, if you ask for it. And as it happens, you're also a Member of Parliament, which gives you that platform. But the platform is to say to all those people, I'm just like you, and this is how I did it.
Absolutely, and that's what I was hoping for, really. I know that people can sometimes be a bit sceptical if MPs want to talk about personal experiences, but PMQs and being an MP does give you a bit of a platform, and I sincerely hope that by starting a conversation in this way, that we are able to talk about what more we can do, because, as was mentioned in the introduction, it is still a massive cause of death in this country. It's the largest cause of death for men of a certain age, and I just don't think that it's right that suicide, taking your own life, should ever be a leading cause of death. I absolutely think that's wrong.
What sort of reaction did you get? I mean, we saw the support there in the House of Commons, didn't we? And I know that, Rishi Sunak had spoke about it. Sir Keir Starmer came over to you, didn't he? How did it feel then, the support that you got from everybody?
It was completely overwhelming, I've got to be honest. And from all sides of the chamber, from every political persuasion, from my constituents and just from members of the public, it's been humbling to have people come up to me or get in contact and share their own experiences and talk about experiences of their own mental health, or speak about family or loved ones who have either thought about suicide or even, sadly, in many cases, gone through with it themselves. And for people to share that with me is very, very humbling indeed. But it was almost like a sense of relief, I think, after getting it off my chest. And I was very, very nervous doing it. I think it was the most nervous I'd been, even more so than when I gave my first speech in the Commons. So, but everyone was incredibly kind. And yeah, both the Prime Minister and Sir Keir Starmer were both very kind immediately afterwards as well.
I don't know how you think about this in terms of your experience, but part of what you spoke about was social media. We've had in the last week and a half the mother of Brianna Gray talking about the dangers of social media, and Brianna Jai, and we know that. I mean, I think of my kids kind of coming home from school, away from the playground, and social media is still part of their lives, and that's true for members of Parliament as well. And sometimes that can be aggressive and nasty and challenging for children, for adults, for members of Parliament. How much of your challenge was that social media?
It definitely fed into it. There was a lot going on at the time, both in terms of my professional life and my private life as well. So I can't say that it was any one thing that led up to it. However, that year, there were a number of threats and intimidation against me that was coming through, and that certainly didn't help the negative state of mind.
Because you had a death threat as well, didn't you?
I did. I had the death threat earlier that year, and I think whilst
you talked about publicly?
Yes, I did, which I felt was important. I totally understand and appreciate. In this line of work, we absolutely have to be held to account. People must be able to challenge us on the decisions we make, on things we do, things we don't do. But there is a point where that crosses a line, and where it crosses a line into threats and intimidation, that's where I feel as if that's not acceptable. We are still human beings at the end of the day. And that just fed into the negative thought cycle. I've developed mechanisms now where it's very easy to say, well, that's just one person. That's obviously not what most people think. But in that moment, when my mental health was in such a bad state, it fed into this negative thought saying, well, this is what everyone thinks. Everyone's thinking this, and this is just one manifestation of it.
But that's part of the challenge for you speaking out last week, because presumably, you know, by drawing attention to yourself and this hugely important issue, but there are people, we know, on social media who thrive on being able to get kind of profile for abusing people. Has it been a tough week on that front?
Not as much as it would have been 3 years ago. It's become much easier now, 4 years into the role, to ignore those trolls and just not let them into my mind whatsoever, because overwhelmingly, the amount of people I meet on a day-to-day basis or I interact with are incredibly positive, whether they agree with me politically or not. Most people are just genuinely kind and understanding, and you can have a reasonable conversation.
And the
with
trolls
people.
are tragic nothings, aren't they?
Exactly, exactly. So they're very easy to ignore.
If you had a message for anyone watching this morning who's having a tough time, what would you say to them?
Talk. It's so straightforward, and I'm not saying it's going to solve everything, but by starting a conversation, it was so shocking to me how quickly I was able to make sense of what was going on just by speaking it aloud. Now, yes, my journey included medication, it included counselling and talking therapies, and it will for many people. And for some people, that recovery time might be a lot longer, it might be shorter. But by starting that conversation, you'll be amazed at how quickly you start to make sense of what is going on and how you can get help. So talk to someone. It could be anyone, family, friends, loved ones, professionals, doesn't matter, but start talking to someone.
And what's next for you in your campaigning and in your politics, in your life? What's next?
I think, well, we're going into an election year, so that's forefront of my mind. I'm very lucky to represent a constituency which is the constituency that I was born in, went to school in and lived in my whole life. And I love Carshalton and Wallington and so deeply. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the experience. This role is so rewarding. You get to meet amazing people. So I'm determined to go into this election swinging. I'm hoping I can come out the other end of it because I love representing my friends and my neighbours and my family. And I sincerely hope I get the chance to carry it on.
We look forward to seeing you swinging in the coming months.
Thanks so much for that, Elliot. Thank you for joining us and for speaking out so bravely.
Thank you.
Cheers, Elliot.
Now, if you've been affected by any of the issues we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at idv.com/helplines.